We're trying to make it hard for the crooks to do business, there's no question about that. Make it difficult for money to flow from their sales, make it more obvious when they are trading in illicit tobacco.
So why focus on illicit tobacco?
It's so profitable. There is so much money flowing through the Australian economy as a result of the sale of illicit tobacco that it's become a significant target for organised criminals. So it's not just people not paying the tax in illicit tobacco. These are organised criminal groups, the same criminal groups that are involved in illicit drug trade, people smuggling, other nasty activity that are now involved in importing and selling illicit tobacco, and the same money laundering organisations that are moving money for the drug trade are moving money for this illicit tobacco. And there's billions of dollars moving through the Australian economy. We need to shut it down.
And can you give a practical example as to how an illegal tobacconist might launder money?
Yeah, there's a whole range of different ways. There's a lot of cash involved in the sale of illicit tobacco, and people move cash in a whole range of different ways. We've seen it moving through non-bank automatic teller machines and cash in transit activities. We see it moving into the black economy and people avoiding tax payments. We see it moving through digital currency exchanges and into cryptocurrency and out of Australia. So money launderers are using all the same techniques they use to move money for other types of crime in moving money through illicit tobacco because there is so much of it.
And why now? Why 2026?
We've been focusing on the illicit tobacco trade for quite a number of years now. Both AUSTRAC and the Australian government and law enforcement more specifically, but the trade is significant. I mean, you can see on every second street corner a shop selling illicit tobacco. It's a big profit motive for organised crime. And as I mentioned, the same organised criminals are involved in illicit tobacco as involved in all other organised crime in Australia. It's not a different group of people. The same harm is being committed by those people, and it's funding the same criminal groups and the same kind of illicit activity. And we need to do everything we can to make this less profitable for these people.
Now, indeed you do, but you're also on your own. So you're a government agency. There's a limit to what you can do. Who are you partnering with? And specifically, how are you working with the banks to try and achieve exactly what you want to achieve?
Yeah, so we are a government agency, but we work with a whole range of Australia's corporate sector, particularly the financial sector and the banking sector in particular.
Are they on board?
They are. So I wrote to the banks in November last year in partnership with the Illicit Tobacco Commissioner. And I did that for a number of reasons. One is to alert them to the problem of illicit funds coming into their businesses through the sale of tobacco. Well, not just directly through the sale of tobacco, but through other means that might be around the movement of funds. To ask them to help us shut that business out and make it harder for criminals to profit. And importantly, to gather further intelligence and information for us and to give us direct information that we can then use with law enforcement to start prosecutions and to shut down money laundering networks.
It would seem, I think, to a normal observer, a reasonable observer, that the banks have known about the funding that they have given to illegal tobacconists for some time. But you've come knocking on the door, looking to clean it up. Why would they cooperate with you now?
So a number of banks were already looking at illicit tobacco in their businesses, but banks and other financial institutions have money laundering responsibilities and legal obligations to make sure they're doing everything they can to understand where illicit finance might be entering their business and to shut those avenues down. So the letter I wrote to banks didn't just ask them to focus on illicit tobacco money that's coming into their bank. It asked them to focus on where they might be banking businesses that are part of this illicit trade, so tobacconists and other convenience stores. We asked them to also focus on where they might be banking enabling businesses that might be helping to move money, so where they might be banking non-bank ATMs or other cash in transit businesses, or indeed where their point of sale technology might be available to retail stores or tobacconists that people might be using to purchase illicit tobacco.
Because ultimately you're looking for the credit to illegal tobacconists to be cut off and in that sense put them out of business. That's basically the long and the short of it, isn't it?
We're trying to make it hard for the crooks to do business, there's no question about that. Make it difficult for money to flow from their sales, make it more obvious when they are trading in illicit tobacco. And when it becomes more obvious to banks and financial institutions, they can then give that intelligence and information to us and we can work with law enforcement to help shut down these illegal businesses.
And importantly, I suppose, the banks need to be able to talk to the banks and share private information about the illegal tobacconists.
They do, and they need to be able to share information with us in particular and with our law enforcement partners about illicit tobacco and illegal tobacconists. And sometimes it might just be a suspicion that someone's trading in illicit tobacco. They don't necessarily have to be police and law enforcement bodies. They just need to be able to identify a suspicion, bring that suspicion to our attention, and we can work with other law enforcement bodies to build greater levels of intelligence that we can then use to close those businesses down.
Brendan Thomas, there's no question it's a force for good. What I would like to know, though, is given this is quite an undertaking by AUSTRAC, when will you know and how will you know that you've had success?
We already do. So we're getting hundreds of reports from banks. We've had more than 300 suspicious reports from banks. We've turned that into more than 76 active leads for law enforcement. I read almost all the intelligence that our organisation provides to law enforcement, and I'm seeing it going out every second day to law enforcement, not just identifying illicit tobacco retailers, but identifying shell companies and shelf companies that might be involved in illicit money laundering, regular businesses and legitimate businesses that are being used by money launderers to move money through illicit tobacco, digital currency exchanges that are involved in moving illicit finance through tobacco. And we're working with law enforcement to shut all those money laundering networks down. So we're seeing them being shut down now. We're seeing law enforcement activity happening, and we're seeing particularly the AFP seizing assets of people involved in the illicit tobacco trade that's flowing from information that we're giving them, which in turn is coming from information that we're getting from the banks.
I want to pivot to something else slightly. AUSTRAC now is asking for real estate agents, financial planners, accountants to be across where they're getting money from their customers, where cash is coming from.
Yes.
And report to you something suspicious. Can you give us a great example of how that's going?
Well, those legal obligations start in July, so they have to enrol with us now from the 31st of March, businesses that are coming under our regulation later this year. And you're right, it's lawyers, accountants, trust and company service providers, jewellers, real estate agents, conveyancers and others involved in real estate transactions. And so they will have the same obligations that banks and financial institutions do have from July. But the kinds of information we're looking to come from them are things like where they might see unusual activity in the creation of corporate structures, for instance. So we see lots of money laundering organisations and criminal organisations that establish shell companies and shelf companies to act as fronts for them. And often through complex corporate structures, they're moving money to try and obfuscate the origins of the sources of those funds. We also do see in Australia quite significantly amounts of illicit money being stored in Australian real estate purchases. That's a big source of illicit money in Australia, and bringing real estate agents, lawyers involved in real estate transactions and conveyancers under the money laundering regime will require them to look for suspicion in those kinds of activities and report that suspicion to us.
I imagine from the reporting point of view, the accountants and lawyers would be completely across the processes around that. What about real estate agents?
Well, it's new for them. This regime is new for everybody that's coming in. We're doing a lot of work with real estate agents and the real estate industry more broadly to help them understand what the red flags are they need to look for in transactions, the kinds of corporate structures that they might want to look for, how to best identify their customers and their clients, and what they might start to look for in terms of risky transactions.
What are you expecting will come out of this?
We're expecting a greater level of knowledge of illicit funds in real estate transactions. We're expecting those businesses to alert themselves much more to the nature of crime risk that they're already exposed to shut that risk out more effectively, to ask some probing questions of their customers about where their finances have come from and why they're doing business with that particular company. But most importantly, we're expecting intelligence to flow from us, from those businesses. And we can then use that intelligence that we'll get from real estate agents and lawyers and accountants and merge that information with the information we already have and are getting through the finance industry and through other information we get through intelligence sources, and build really complex pictures of organised crime's business structures both in Australia and internationally, and then work with our law enforcement partners to shut them down.
And you mentioned before, but when does that kick in?
It kicks in on the 1st of July.
And you're expecting full compliance?
We are expecting full compliance from those businesses.
How will you enforce that?
Well, we're doing as much as we can to assist businesses to comply. So We've produced a range of materials that make the legal regime as simple as we possibly can. Indeed, for small businesses, we developed a whole range of what we call starter programs. So a small accounting company or a small real estate firm can take that package and know what they need to do to comply with the law. And we're doing as much as we can to give those businesses as much information about the nature of organised crime and money laundering so that
they know what to look
they can look for. And our regulatory stance is to help people comply with the law rather than throw the book at them if they're failing from the start. We understand the responsibility is brand new. It's going to take a little while for people to understand what to look for and to get used to this kind of practice as it has in the financial world. And we'll work hand in hand with businesses to make sure they understand that before we start throwing the book at them.
Brendan Thomas, thank you for joining the business.
Hey, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you.